Let me start by emphasizing that we have no priesthood in Islam. Yes, we do have scholarship, or what we call in Arabic fuqaha, and we do have leadership, which we call in Arabic imma or imamat. We have those, but we don't have a priesthood. And when I was a young man or a young child, actually, it was normal for me to regard the Maulana, the Imam, the Sheikh, whatever, the guy who came from Saudi Arabia to tell us, how to be Muslims. It was normal for me to equate that guy with a priest because that is what he really amounted to. He would do name givings, he would preside at funerals, he would preside at weddings, and that is typically a priestly function. Now, in the traditional Islamic sense, in the history of Islam, there is no presiding officer or some sort of religious officer that presides at these functions. We bury our own dead. We name our own grandchildren and children. And we wed our own daughters. And there is no need for a middleman. But as tradition has evolved over the years, we've taken on a Christian image, a Jewish image for our religion. Our religion, which is never supposed to be a religion in the first place, has become a third religion. And then you have Muslims bragging about we're the second largest, we're the largest religion, whatever, fastest growing religion. Islam is not a religion, and this is not a numbers game. When you become the majority, you should actually be worried because the majority is normally not on the right side of history. So let us just dispense with all that nonsense. And then when I say that the priests are loyal to each other, then I don't mean those who are genuine leaders and fuqaha. I mean those people whose sole aim is to preserve a tradition that has no basis, whose sole aim is to herd the masses of Muslims like a herd of cattle and to control the people without real legitimacy, having themselves very little or no legitimacy. Those are the priests. And it is about them that I want to quickly make one important point. You see, the recent so-called pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, which the reaction to that viral infection, right, to that influenza infection, was very, very, very telling. It was during that infection, during that viral infection, the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, it started in the year 2019, that we really saw the masks come off these priests. Because what we noticed was that they were led not by the Qur'an, by the Sunnah that they believe, not by consensus of the Muslims, none of the above. They were solely led by the Western medical fraternity, the World Health Organization. Now that is where they paid their allegiance to, and they took entire Muslim populations on a ride with them on that trip. And they shut down the mosques. They closed the mosques. It took so little for them to shut down all the mosques and to ban their own people from going back to the mosques. And even when they did go back to the mosque, they had this ridiculous rule about people having to stay 2 meters apart, 1 meter apart. They brought in weird and wonderful new ways of making salah that is not in hadith, not in Qur'an, nowhere to be found, where the people are spread out. The whole idea of Islam is a sila, it is a connectedness. So they broke that sila, that connectedness, that sila between the Muslims by creating these gaps in between. So their Islam, what the point I want to make is what they proved to us during that so-called pandemic was that they are on their own trip, my friends. Their masters are not God Almighty. Their masters are the World Health Organization. The masters are the people who pay their salaries, and their masters are themselves. They look at each other and they sort of become a peer support group. That is what they are, a peer support group. And you know what you call a peer support group like that, in that sense? You call it a cabal. You call it a cabal. And that is what they really are. And they exposed themselves there. And then they inflicted the injection on their people. They then went and wholesale embraced that injection and just blanket gave blessing over that thing to their people. And today we find out that there is no indication of what the ingredients are, what the elements, the substances are that make up that injection. And yet they imposed it on their people. The proof, loud and clear for you, is that if you stick with them, they will lead you down their garden path. They have got very little interest in Hadith, let alone Qur'an, and their only aim is to make us, to earn us a living, to use Islam as a business, to use you as a customer, whether you a Hajj customer, a Ramadan dates customer, whether you a Salah, a customer for hijab, attire, whether you're a customer for traveling to the Holy Lands, you are just a customer. Or whether you're a customer for the countless charities that are in operation, you are just a cow to be milked. And Islam is incidental in the whole process, my friend. Islam is incidental. If they could easily swap it out for something else. If you still go on believing that these people are your salvation, I've got a word of warning for you. You need to sit up and take stock of the people that you have appointed as your leaders and your holy men.